Hello everyone, and welcome to the 6th episode in our AI and You podcast series. Today is Monday, August 17th, 2020, and I'm your host, Vikhar Saidi. I'm a computer scientist and engineer, a lecturer, and a consultant. I'm also the author of several books. My most recent book is about artificial intelligence and is titled The Genome Affair. The Genome Affair is a work of speculative fiction. It examines what the world might be like if some of the more extraordinary capabilities forecast to be realized in AI over the next 20 or 30 years were actually realized today. Given the growing list of frightening existential threats humankind now faces, the book pays particular attention to the impact AI is expected to have on world affairs. The book is available in ebook format for those who prefer to read on a digital device, but it's also available in a high-quality paperback edition. The Genome Affair is available on Amazon, so I hope you'll take the time to read it and to leave a review. Book reviews are very helpful for writers. I'm available to give talks on artificial intelligence and its related technologies, and on the impact AI is expected to have on our world. If you'd like to get in touch with me to arrange a talk or meeting at your company or organization, you can find my contact info in the podcast notes below. And now, on to today's podcast. In our last podcast, episode 5, I talked about the bifurcation of the internet as the technology Iron Curtain descends between China and the United States. I also talked about the bifurcation of Homo Sapiens as technologies such as brain-machine interfaces become a reality in the coming years. In today's podcast, episode 6, I'll talk about how the nascent technology of quantum computing will make artificial intelligence unimaginably more powerful as it proceeds on a path towards its ultimate goal of achieving super intelligence. I'll also talk about how another nascent technology, blockchain, enabled by artificial intelligence, will revolutionize world trade. Finally, I'll touch on the impact these technologies will have on governance. Let's get started. In 2019, Google attained quantum supremacy. Essentially, this means that they were able to use a quantum computer to solve an extremely complex mathematical problem faster than a classical computer or a supercomputer. Sycamore, Google's quantum computer, solved the problem in question in about 200 seconds. Google estimated that the very same problem would take today's state-of-the-art supercomputer 10,000 years to solve. It was a humbling moment in the embryonic world of quantum computing. Today, supercomputers are the most powerful species in the classical computing genus. These machines use bits that are essentially switches, and they are binary. Each bit is either in the on or off position, with each of these two states represented by a 1 or a 0, respectively. But quantum computers, like the subatomic particles upon which the idea of the quantum computer is based, are not in a binary state. Quantum bits, or qubits, exist on a spectrum between two states, much like a coin that is both heads and tails while it is in the state of spinning, and unlike a switch in a binary state that is either on or off. This concept of qubits existing in what is known as superposition in the quantum computing lexicon enables problem resolution in parallel. That is to say, all possible outcomes in a particular problem domain are evaluated simultaneously rather than sequentially. Supercomputers, although extremely powerful, are limited in their performance by the binary nature of the bits in their processor. These bits are always in one state or the other, and can thus evaluate each potential solution in the solution set sequentially. In many complex calculations, particularly those involving natural phenomena, a sequential approach can take an unacceptably long time. Some examples of problems that are well suited to artificial intelligence enabled by quantum computing include fully autonomous vehicles, complex chemical reactions and molecular analysis in drug development, economic forecasting and financial market modeling, weather forecasting, cryptography and encryption algorithms. Although quantum computers are extremely powerful relative to classical supercomputers, it is very difficult to keep qubits stable, and so error correction is very important and very complex. The quantum computer's processor needs to be thoroughly shielded from any form of electromagnetic interference, and the processor core must be maintained at temperatures very near absolute zero, 0 degrees Kelvin or minus 273 degrees Celsius. This is essentially the same temperature of interstellar space. Today, we have machines with 52 qubits, but we need to build reliable quantum computers with thousands or tens of thousands of qubits, since each additional bit adds an exponential increase in computational power. Only then will these machines be really useful and impactful in some of the problem domains mentioned above. Quantum computers and their qubits also display another extraordinary phenomenon seen in quantum mechanics. This is a phenomenon known as entanglement. In entanglement, we observe that two qubits are intimately related to each other. In other words, it is as if they are connected. This means that the state of one qubit is replicated by a second qubit, although the two are not physically connected. It is a particularly eerie phenomenon that remains unexplained by quantum physicists, and it boggles the mind further when we realize that entanglement remains in place regardless of the distance between the two quantum particles. Quantum mechanics and quantum physics underlie chemistry, which underlies biology. Understanding quantum mechanics and then applying this understanding to quantum computing offers the potential to advance the capability of artificial intelligence to unimaginable levels of performance. Since 2014, startup investment in quantum computing is in the range of hundreds of millions of dollars, whereas the investment in artificial intelligence in 2018 alone was $9.3 billion. It is very early days for quantum computing, but the promise is extraordinary. Let's now shift the discussion and talk about blockchain. Not unlike quantum computing today, blockchain is also in a nascent stage. But if its value can be realized as envisioned, blockchain is poised to bring about a very dramatic and global revolution in commerce and trade. Blockchain will, for the second time in human history, enable peer-to-peer transactions between buyers and sellers of goods and services without the presence or necessity of intermediaries. If we go back to the beginning of civilization in Mesopotamia some 12,000 years ago, all trade conducted in the market for various types of goods and services took place directly between buyers and sellers. There was no pressing need for intermediaries. But eventually, trade expanded across geographies, societies, nations, and empires, and these communities did not know each other, and as a result, they did not trust one another. The need had arisen for a mechanism or series of mechanisms to manage the emerging and inherent uncertainty of these transactions and the identity of the two parties involved. We needed ways to track the goods in question, and we needed some method of recourse if the transaction was unable to be completed as originally agreed between the two parties. Humankind also needed some store of value, such as gold or silver, or a currency underwritten by a government backed by hard assets that everyone trusted. If transactions across geographies were to be possible, societies would require a mechanism to transfer this value as payment from buyer to seller, despite the distance between them. The parties also realized that they would need commercial contracts that would hold them both accountable and liable for the terms of the agreement. This new reality created the need for notaries or lawyers who would draft contracts for formal or informal courts where trade disputes could be adjudicated, as well as banks and other financial institutions that could secure deposits and transfers between buyers and sellers. This mode of anonymous trading, in which the parties no longer knew each other, gave rise to financial intermediaries that could assist in the completion of a transaction between various geographically separated parties that did not know or trust each other but still desired to engage in trade. With blockchain, we are able to go back to our earliest days of trading, a time when the commercial relationship and transaction was directly between purveyors of goods and services and their customers. Blockchain largely eliminates the need for intermediaries such as banks or governments. It is essentially an encrypted ledger of all transactions that will ensure that the buyers and sellers are trustworthy and can enable transfer of a store of value from the buyer to the seller. Although this technology is also in a relatively nascent stage, the blockchain model, enabled by artificial intelligence to process the vast amounts of data and perhaps quantum computing to ensure that the data and transactions are secure beyond a doubt, will be revolutionary when compared to how we are currently performing transactions between buyers and sellers. Today, it is virtually impossible to conduct transactions without financial and government intermediaries who will, of course, claim some of the value of each and every transaction for themselves as a fee. We are essentially eliminating a huge industry and government function that is lucrative for both, and they are unlikely to step aside voluntarily. With artificial intelligence, blockchain, quantum computing, biotechnology, and other emerging technologies that will revolutionize how we do virtually everything, we are approaching a tipping point, an inflection where the current state of federal, state, and local governance are becoming outdated and are on their way to irrelevance. We need our brightest minds in governance, law, science, and technology to establish regular working forums on a global level so that we can manage this unstoppable revolution. Otherwise, we are likely to experience a level of chaos and uncertainty that is difficult to live with, or at least deeply unpleasant to imagine. Thank you for spending some time with me. I'm trying to follow the TED Talk format, and so I'm keeping these podcasts to about 20 minutes. Let me know what you think. I hope you'll find these insights into artificial intelligence helpful, and I hope you'll read my new book, The Genome Affair. Until next time, then, this has been the AI and You podcast with author Vicar Saidi.